The wind moved like a whisper through the dead trees of Ash Grove, rustling the dry leaves still clinging to their skeletal branches. It was late October, and the small town of Ash Grove, West Virginia, sat cloaked in a gray veil of fog and silence. The air smelled of rotting bark, ash, and something far older, something forgotten by time but not by the land. Eleanor Kane had returned for the first time in 22 years. She stood at the edge of her childhood property, suitcase in one hand, the other clutching a faded photograph. The house before her, once white with blue shutters, was now decaying, its wood siding bowed and blackened with mold. Vines coiled up the porch railings like veins on an ancient corpse. The windows were dark. No lights. No movement. Just like she remembered it the night her sister vanished. Her boots crunched on the gravel path leading to the porch. She paused, looked back at her car, a rented Toyota Corolla, its engine ticking softly in the cool air. She took a deep breath, then stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned under her weight. Somewhere inside, the house creaked, like it knew she had returned. She pulled the key from around her neck. It was the same one she had taken the night she fled, still warm from her skin. The brass had dulled, but the teeth hadn't changed. She slid it into the lock. Click! The door swung open into darkness. She entered. The scent of dust, mildew, and decay wrapped around her like a shroud. Moonlight filtered through cracked blinds, painting slats of pale light across the worn floorboards. Furniture, covered in yellowed sheets, stood like shrouded specters in a mausoleum of memories. She stood still for a moment, listening. Her ears filled with silence, but beneath it, something throbbed, like a heartbeat. Not hers. She moved to the staircase, hand grazing the railing. The steps led upward into shadow, but it wasn't the upstairs she feared, it was the basement. It always had been. Ellie? The voice was faint. A child's whisper. Familiar. She froze. Her hand trembled. That voice had haunted her dreams since 2003. Eleanor spun around, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The hallway behind her was empty. Dust danced in the air. She waited, ears straining for another sound. But nothing came. Just silence. Just the house. She shook her head. It's in your mind, she whispered. Memories. Nothing more. And yet. She made her way to the living room, pulling the sheet from the old couch and coughing as a cloud of dust rose. Everything was as they had left it, abandoned in the chaos after Lila disappeared. The police had questioned everyone. Searched the woods. Dredged the creek. Nothing. No trace of her little sister. No signs of struggle. Just gone. Eleanor was 15. Lila was 9. She had always blamed herself for falling asleep that night. For ignoring the knocking from beneath the floor. She sat slowly, the couch frame creaking beneath her. She took out the photograph again. It showed the two of them standing beneath the ash trees behind the house. It was fall, much like now. Their mother had taken the picture just days before it all went to hell. Behind them in the photo stood a small stone well, almost swallowed by ivy and moss. She remembered it now. Vividly. They called it the Hollow. But their grandmother had another name for it. The Binding Pit. She had told them never to play near it. Not because of danger. Because of what lived underneath. It wasn't until the next morning that Eleanor ventured outside. The fog hadn't lifted. If anything, it had grown thicker, hanging like a wet shroud between the trees. The ash grove behind the house was silent. No birds. No insects. Just the sound of her own breathing as she pushed through the brittle underbrush. The trees looked sick. Their trunks were gray, bark flaking like dead skin. The ground was soft, almost spongy, with ash-colored soil. And there, in the middle, was the well. The hollow. It was just as she remembered. Low, circular, made of cracked stone, with a rusted iron grate over the opening. A chain, half buried in dirt, trailed off into the woods. Someone had once tried to lock it shut. She crouched and wiped away a layer of dead leaves from the stone lip. Symbols were carved there. Faint, worn by time and weather. Runes. She didn't recognize them, but something in her bones did. A vibration. A whisper. Ellie. She jolted, looking up. Nothing. Then, movement. A shape darting between the trees. She turned, heart racing. Who's there? No answer. She took a step back from the well, and something clinked under her boot. She looked down. A small silver locket. Broken, bent. She picked it up, and her stomach twisted. Inside was a photo of Lila. Still a child. Still smiling. And on the back, scratched in the metal, barely legible. Blood keeps it sleeping. Later that night, Eleanor sat on the porch, the locket in her hand. The silence around her was wrong. Not peaceful, oppressive. The air felt heavy. She thought of calling someone. But who? Her parents were dead. No friends in town. No one who believed what she had said after Lila disappeared. That Lila had been pulled down into the basement. By something that wasn't human. She hadn't seen it, not directly. But she had heard it whisper her name. From inside the walls. From under the floorboards. And on the last night, it had whispered Lila's instead. Ellie, can I play? She squeezed the locket tight until the edge cut her palm. A drop of blood fell to the wood. And something stirred in the ash grove. Eleanor didn't sleep that night. She sat in the living room with a flashlight, the locket dangling from her hand, listening. The silence in the house had become something else. It wasn't absence of sound, it was suppression. Like the house was holding its breath, waiting. At 3:17 a.m., the knock came. From beneath the floorboards. 3 slow raps. Just like 22 years ago. Her chest tightened. She stared at the floor, heart thundering. Don't go down there. But she was already rising. Already moving toward the basement door. The key was still in the lock. Her fingers shook as she turned it. Click. The door opened with a low creak. Cold, earthy air flowed up the stairs. It smelled of wet stone, mold, and blood. She flicked on her flashlight and descended. The basement hadn't changed. Still unfinished stone walls, dirt floor, rusted tools. Her beam swept across old boxes and broken furniture. She held her breath. Then she saw it. In the corner, half covered with a rotting tarp, was the trapdoor. Exactly where she remembered. Where Lila had vanished. The wood was stained black around the edges. Charred. Burned long ago. As if someone had tried to seal it with fire. But failed. She stepped closer, pulse hammering. As she crouched, she noticed something etched into the wood of the trapdoor. A symbol, a tree, twisted and burning. And beneath it, 4 words scratched deep. We broke the pact. Suddenly, a voice behind her. Ellie. She spun, flashlight jerking wildly. Lila stood at the top of the stairs. Same age as the day she vanished. Same nightgown. Same smile. Come back upstairs, Lila said softly. Her eyes were black. Hollow. Eleanor stepped back in horror. You're not her, she said. Lila smiled wider. Then come find her. And vanished. The next day, Eleanor drove to the Ash Grove Historical Society. A single dusty building beside the old post office. She didn't expect answers, just a direction. But the old clerk behind the desk, a man named Thomas Dreyever, looked up at her with tired eyes when she asked about the well. His expression changed. "You shouldn't be messing around the hollow," he said. "I grew up there. My sister disappeared." He hesitated. "Kane family, right?" She nodded. "I shouldn't tell you this," he said, glancing around. "But your great-grandmother, she was part of the pact." "So was mine." Eleanor blinked. "The what?" He pulled out a binder, open to a yellowed page. A photograph, dated 1912. 8 people standing in the ash grove. Her great-grandmother, Ruth Kane, stood among them. All dressed in black. Beneath the photo, a line handwritten in ink. "Those who feed the hollow keep the town safe." "They made a deal," Dreyever whispered. "A blood pact. Every 25 years, someone would be chosen. Given. Sacrificed. To keep the dark thing beneath the ash trees asleep." Eleanor's mouth went dry. "And if the sacrifice stopped?" Dreyever looked her dead in the eyes. "Then it wakes. And takes what it's owed." That night, the forest began to scream. Eleanor awoke to a chorus of whispers, not inside the house, but from the trees outside. She ran to the window. The ash grove was glowing. Faint. Pale green light, like rot, spilling from the ground. The trees were moving, as if writhing, branches curling unnaturally. The well had cracked open. The chain that once held the grate was broken. Torn. And standing beside it, was Lila. Smiling. Waiting. Eleanor ran through the front door, heart pounding in her chest, barely managing to keep her footing on the gravel. The moonlight was harsh, silvering the edges of the trees, making them seem even more monstrous than usual. As she reached the ash grove, the greenish glow intensified, blinding, sickly, like an infection spreading across the land. The wind howled as if urging her to stop, but she kept moving. The ground beneath her feet was soft, like walking on wet sponge, each step more difficult than the last. The well called to her. It was louder now. The whispers were no longer faint, they were almost inside her mind. She found her sister standing at the lip of the well, her pale skin glowing under the eerie light. Her clothes were tattered, the same nightgown from years ago. Her eyes were empty voids, dark and cavernous. "You shouldn't have come, Ellie," Lila's voice echoed, but it wasn't her voice. It was distorted, hollow, like it had been swallowed by something else. Eleanor stopped a few paces away, the words from Thomas Dreyever echoing in her mind. "Those who feed the hollow keep the town safe." Lila slowly turned her head, her neck cracking like old wood. "Come closer," she whispered, her smile widening to an unnatural degree. "Come see." "No," Eleanor choked out. "I won't let you." Lila's smile faded into a twisted snarl. "You don't have a choice." With a sickening lurch, the ground under the well gave way, sending a blast of rotten air and thick, black smoke upwards. Eleanor stumbled backward, hands over her mouth as the smoke burned her throat, her eyes stinging with the foul stench of decay and death. And then, the thing in the well stirred. It wasn't a thing of flesh and bone. It wasn't even human. It was an ancient, shifting presence, shadow and smoke that writhed in the shape of limbs, of faces, of eyes that blinked and blinked again, but never looked. Just watched. Waiting. The earth trembled beneath her feet. The trees around her groaned, their branches twisting as if in agony. The hollow had awoken. Lila turned, her body jerking unnaturally, and stepped back, disappearing into the mist. But Eleanor could hear her voice, rising above the swirling chaos. It was a chant. Low, guttural, like a prayer. And Eleanor understood. It wasn't just the sacrifice. It was the promise. Every 25 years, a cane would return to keep the balance. To feed the hollow. Eleanor was that cane now. She had always been meant to be. The trees shook. The ground cracked open. And something reached out from the darkness. She woke up the next morning in her childhood bedroom. The air was thick with dust. The light was too bright. She could hear the distant hum of traffic, the familiar sounds of a normal world. Her world. But as she sat up, her body stiff with dread, she saw it. The locket. It was on the nightstand. But this time, there was no photo of Lila inside. Only the burned image of the twisted tree, the runes, now glowing faintly. Her pulse quickened. Eleanor stood, her legs weak as she approached the window. Below, Ash Grove seemed the same. Quiet. Peaceful. The fog was gone. The town was safe again. And yet, her gaze lingered on the trees. The ash grove was still there. And in the distance, far beyond the town's reach, she could see the faintest flicker of pale light. End.